Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. This is a Fox News alert. A source telling Fox Trump is pausing all U.S. military aid to Ukraine until he determines the Ukrainians show a commitment to good faith peace negotiations. More news when we get it. But first, the new Red Scare. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, since their Nazi and Hitler strategy hadn't really paid off, Democrats have racked their tiny little brains for a new line of attack. Now, what is it? Two words, starting with the letters K and O. Now, wait for it.
Everyone who signs up to work for Donald Trump is signing up for one single project, and that is the transition of American democracy to a kind of kleptocratic oligarchy in which the billionaires rule, in which they get to steal from regular Americans.
Wow, kleptocratic oligarchy, Chris. Big words. You must be smart. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the Democrats' early top contenders for 2028.
If that's the domestic project, then the way to normalize that kind of government is to associate yourself with similar governments abroad, like the Kremlin.
OMG, this isn't even a new strategy. This is warmed over Russian collusion. Oh, how original. It was just 3 days after the man dressed like Captain Spock was booted without lunch from the White House. We're getting a much clearer picture tonight of how things went down and why President Trump is the only politician telling the full truth here. But first, we have to remember how we got here. The U.S. government has been involved in Ukraine for many years. And, by the way, to mixed results. And no one knows that better than Chris Murphy himself, because he, with key Republican senators, helped usher in the ouster of Ukraine's President Viktor Yanukovych back in 2014. Now, Murphy himself explained why sitting U.S. senators were engaged in what certainly looked like election interference in a country whose president was democratically elected.
Yanukovych was elected. He was chosen in a relatively free and fair election, maybe not by U.S. standards, but we certainly recognized his legitimate right to govern. And when Senator McCain and I went to the square, we were very careful about the words in which we used. We went there in the wake of Yanukovych bringing the police forces onto the square to try to forcibly break up those protests. And we certainly got a lot of grief from people asking why two U.S. senators are going to the square to support a protest movement against an elected government.
Wait, really? Well, we have one problem now. Because they were upset because the president who had been elected was crushing protests. Well, Zelensky himself has not allowed elections. He's outlawed protests. He's banned many Orthodox church services, most of them. He's even banned the use of the Russian language in many instances. Now, some of these measures seem politically popular in Ukraine, but nevertheless, is he really the exemplar of a democratic freedom fighter? Now, look, we all know what Russia's position is. It's a one-man show with Putin ruling with an iron fist. But Trump didn't create this mess, and his handling of this is not the problem. A weak Biden presidency set the stage for this bloody mess. Then the region's been in a bloody mess now for 3 years. Now, in November, voters had a choice. Elect Kamala and stay in Ukraine, as Biden said, as long as it takes. Or elect Trump, who pledged to end the war. No, the voters obviously elected Trump. But the forever war chorus is trying to paint Trump as the outlier.
Ronald Reagan would talk about peace through strength, say you never get to peace with Russians through being weak. That's exactly what's happening right now, though. A show of weakness. Weakness leads to more war, more invasions, more suffering. It's that simple.
Oh, well, simple. Of course, maybe Joe forgot. Peace through strength wasn't just about rebuilding our military. It was about rejuvenating our economy. And ours is currently weighed down with $36 trillion and counting in debt. And interest payments on that debt exceed $1 trillion annually, and yet we're still deficit spending like there's no tomorrow. That is not strength. That is weakness. A dynamic Trump is trying mightily to turn all of it around. It's going to be hard. But again, the think tank crowd, and they live in an alternative reality, apparently still believes that America's patience and resources are unlimited. But given our economic condition and the public mood, Trump's dedication to peace toward reducing America's involvement in this war, as we learned tonight with a pause of military aid, it's perfectly in line with past Republican presidents. Remember, Eisenhower won the presidency in large part because he pledged to extract us from the Korean War, and that's what he did. So was he collaborating with the communists? And in 1956, of course, he didn't stop the USSR from taking Hungary. And we didn't get involved when they took Czechoslovakia in 48, and when the Soviet Union crushed the Prague Spring in 1968. It was ugly, but it wasn't our battle to fight. Now, did any of this mean that these presidents were sympathetic to the people in charge? Of course they weren't. Of course, it's ridiculous to think that. And remember, our brave troops were bogged down and dying in the Vietnam War. And it was a war that Nixon ultimately had to end. Now, did this mean he was pro-North Vietnamese? Of course not. Reagan pulled out of Lebanon after 241 U.S. service members were slaughtered there. Was that weak? Or was it pragmatic? Now, neither Donald Trump nor his supporters are rooting for Putin. But they see the world as it is, not as some fantasy created by those who profit off bloodshed. Of course, the legacy media, though, they're going to always rally against the Trump agenda. They used to be for peace, but no longer. But they're going to rally against Trump no matter how reasonable his position is.
Some of your Republican allies are puzzled by the steps that President Trump has taken to placate Vladimir Putin. I want to bring up a post that Lisa Murkowski.
Well, which ones? What steps has the president taken to placate?
Let me show you what. Lisa
are we arming the Russians?
Are
we providing economic assistance to the Russians? Have we given the Russians $180 billion? What are we doing to placate? The only thing we've done is say, are you guys willing to talk about peace?
Trump's not naive here. He knows what Putin is like. Just like Nixon knew what Mao was like, and Eisenhower knew what Khrushchev was all about. Voters want to take care of the home front, which is hurting. We all know it. They want us to have more friends and fewer foreign obligations. But look, we're not in a great situation now because the Uniparty blew the massive economic and geopolitical advantage that we had as a country, which Reagan's policies made possible. We ended up losing in Iraq, losing in Afghanistan, and now a stalemate in Ukraine. In a war, our money and our weapons, even if not, thank goodness, our men and women made possible, our troops. Public opinion is, so far, in Trump's favor. 51% favor his handling of the Russian-Ukraine situation, 49% disapprove. But compare this to how they rated Biden. 61% disapproved of Biden's handling of the war. Only 39% approving. Those are the ones who still thought he had all his marbles. But here's the bottom line. The delusional types who promised us victory in Ukraine, remember it was going to be quick? And of course in Afghanistan and also in Iraq, the surges kept coming, the money and weapons kept flowing. Now they're wailing, but there's a reason why they are no longer in charge and why a pro-interventionist Republican has not won the presidency since 2004 and likely will never win the presidency, not in our lifetime. So right now, it's Trump's job to clean up the mess the old establishment left behind, and that is exactly what he's trying to do.